Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something that's been on my mind a lot lately. The concept of possibility. You know those moments when you think something's completely impossible, only to see it happen right before your eyes? Or those astronomical odds that somehow still play out in real life? That's what we're exploring today. We'll look at why nothing is truly impossible, why our fears are often irrational, and why your very existence is perhaps the greatest statistical miracle of all. So grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's explore why in this crazy universe of ours, anything really is possible. If you find value in this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss out on future mind-expanding conversations. The uncertain nature of our reality in life. Anything is possible because we can never fully understand how the world works. The laws of physics prevent us from being able to tell the future with absolute certainty. Everything we predict is a probability. Some outcomes are highly probable, others are less likely, while some have astronomically low chances of ever happening. But here's the key. Even the most improbable events have probabilities that are vanishingly small, but they remain non-zero. This fundamental uncertainty raises fascinating questions about our daily lives. Would you get hit by a car tomorrow? Will you ever get struck by lightning? Will humanity ever achieve world peace? If there's a chance that anything can happen, no matter how small, what are the odds of various events actually occurring in our lifetimes? When lightning strikes 7 times, I was scrolling through the deepest parts of the internet one day when I came across the remarkable story of Roy Cleveland Sullivan, a man who was hit by lightning 7 times during his lifetime. The odds of getting struck by lightning once isn't actually that low. It's about 1 in 15,000. Even if you live in a small town, chances are somebody there has been struck by lightning at least once. But the odds of being struck 7 times in a period of 80 years? That's a 1 in 1028 chance. That's 1 followed by 28 zeros. These seem like such incredible and unfortunate odds, until you consider that you're more likely to get struck by lightning 7 times than you are to shuffle a deck of cards into perfect numerical order. Those odds? 1 in 1068, 1 followed by 68 zeros. This illustrates something profound about probability. As humans, we simply can't comprehend these kinds of numbers intuitively. If we could, we'd stop worrying about a lot of things and stop taking for granted most of the things we should actually be concerned about. Irrational fears versus real risks. Take sharks, for example. Thanks to movies like Jaws, humans now have an immense fear of sharks. But the reality is you're more likely to be killed by a vending machine than by a shark. The odds of being killed by a vending machine are 1 in 112 million, while the odds of being killed by a shark are a staggering 1 in 250 million. Even the odds of being attacked by a shark, not necessarily killed, are much lower at 1 in 3.7 million. For context, you're more likely to be killed by a dog, 1 in 112,400 chance, than by a shark, yet we still keep dogs in our homes as loving pets. You're more likely to be killed by hornets, wasps, or bees, 1 in 63,025, than by a shark. In fact, you're more likely to be executed by the government for committing murder, 1 in 119,000, than you are to be killed by a shark. When you put a little thought into it, you realize that most of the time our fears are sensational rather than rational. When something tragic happens and garners a lot of public attention, we become more afraid of that thing, even if it's much less common than other, less notorious dangers. The airplane paradox. Perhaps the most prominent example of irrational fear is our collective anxiety about airplane crashes. Yes, when planes do crash, it's tragic. But because these events cause such a spectacle and receive extensive media coverage, we forget that air travel is still by far the safest way to travel. Passenger airplane incidents are very rare, and your odds of dying in a plane crash are very slim at 1 in 205,000. That's incredibly low when you compare it to your odds of dying in a car accident, which is just 1 in 107. For motorcycle riders, it's 1 in 890, and even pedestrians aren't safe at 1 in 541. But maybe the reason airplane deaths are so low has something to do with our fear-induced caution. Before people board an airplane, they usually prepare well in advance. No harmful objects are allowed on board, and there's always more than one designated pilot who has trained for years on safety practices. Compare that to road travel, where we don't really think that much about safety, and you can see why things are the way they are. With the odds that you'll be involved in a drunk driving accident in your lifetime being incredibly high at 2 in 3, it's clear we could all do better by reducing risk through simple measures like designating a driver beforehand or taking Uber when going out. Left-handed in a right-handed world. Another thing we rarely consider is the danger of right-handed appliances for left-handed individuals. It's true that most of the world is right-handed, but if we're learning anything as a species, it's the importance of inclusiveness, and this should extend to dominant hands as well. As it stands, the odds of a left-handed person dying simply because they used a right-handed appliance incorrectly is 1 in 7 million. While these chances look ridiculously slim, it has to happen to somebody. The ambidextrous people among us, about 1 in 100 people, could help us decide what appliances are better suited for different dominant hands. The art of probability in careers and success art is very subjective. What some people might find beautiful, others will find ugly. What one might consider great acting, others might see as over the top and annoying. Unlike science, art doesn't have a definitive set of rules, which makes it difficult to find success in creative fields. If you want to be a surgeon, for instance, you know that if you pass medical school exams, complete your internship, go through residency and so forth, you'll make it. You have a set path to follow. But if you want to be a supermodel, a rock star, or a YouTuber, it's not that straightforward. You have to work hard every single day, and even then, your odds are very slim. You can be a theater kid all your life, go to film school, practice as much as possible, but in the end, the odds of becoming a movie star aren't very encouraging. Just 1 in 1.1 million. It's amazing that even with odds this slim, thousands of people travel from all parts of the world to Los Angeles every year, trying to fulfill their dreams of being on the big screen. Interestingly, you have a much better chance of winning an Oscar, 1 in 11,500, than becoming a movie star. But of course, this Oscar statistic includes all the technical awards that are given when everyone is taking a bathroom break. Most people would rather take a 1 in 1.1 million chance than receive an award when no one's watching. If you're a writer, however, the odds are slightly in your favor. There's a 1 in 220 chance that you'll write a New York Times bestseller if you put in the time and effort necessary. These odds definitely improve your chances of making your dream a reality. Sports are closer related to science than arts, because most of the time, if you work hard enough, you'll achieve some kind of success. But how hard can you work when there are only so many medals to go around? Millions of people around the world dedicate their entire lives to competing in the Olympics, yet only 1 in 662,000 will ever win a medal. The dreams we nurture and the reality we face. Think about the number of children who have worn a spacesuit and helmet to career day in school and told everybody that they want to be astronauts. Now consider that the odds of becoming an astronaut are 1 in 12.1 million, and you might feel sad for those little kids whose dreams will one day have to be crushed. What if they wanted to be president? Well, the chance of becoming a US president is 1 in 10 million, unless, that is, you're a religious 6-foot-tall Harvard Law graduate and military veteran. Then your odds improve dramatically, especially if you're a Harvard alumnus. As surprising as it might sound, the odds that the President of America has attended Harvard is 1 in 358. So if you want to have the best chance of becoming president, you know which school to apply to. However, getting into Harvard is almost as difficult as becoming president, with a chance of just 4.6% of being admitted. You might want to apply to some backup schools as well. At the end of the day, we all just want to be successful. Whether it's through the arts or going through the so-called traditional route of finishing college and getting a good job, we all just want to have enough money to live comfortably while we're still young. But sadly, the odds are stacked against us. There's a slim chance of just between 6.4% and 22.3% that you'll become a millionaire, with different factors like race, education, wealth status, and age helping to place you somewhere in that range. While the chance of becoming a billionaire, with 8 billion humans in the world and only around 2,000 billionaires, it's basically non-existent. The bittersweet reality of aging. Getting old has a bittersweet taste to it. On the one hand, you're getting wiser, more mature, and you have a much better understanding of the world than you did when you were younger. But on the other hand, you're also getting weaker, forgetting things more, and sadly, your body just keeps breaking down one system after another. The statistics don't help at all. If you're under 20 right now, there's a 1 in 4 chance that you'll be disabled before you retire. And it gets worse. There's a 1 in 2 chance that at the age of 75, you'll have disabling hearing loss. This is why whenever people say they want to work hard now so they can enjoy their retirement, I feel bad for them. Because most times, at that age, you don't really get to enjoy anything the way you once did. All you can really do is sit around and reminisce about a life that once was. And when the Grim Reaper comes, you say goodbye to your loved ones and move on. That's why you should do everything you want to do right now. For some reason, there's a 7% higher chance that you'll die on your birthday than on any other day, going out together with the candles. But for a few of us, living to 100 is possible, with the odds of that happening being approximately 1 in 5,680, with those odds increasing significantly if you're biologically a woman. The miracle of your existence. On the other end of the spectrum, one of the most incredible human achievements is simply being born. If you're here reading this article right now, you deserve a round of applause. You ran, you fought, you survived, and against all odds, you made it. The odds of you existing were 1 in 5.5 trillion. But here you are. You might have been the 1/20 chance of being born on your mom's exact due date. Or you're like most of us who are born around 2 weeks before or after. You might be the 1 in 250 who are geniuses, burdened with the weight of advancing our civilization. Or like the rest of us who are cheering them on. Whoever you are, whatever it took for you to get here, that was an incredible feat. 1. That is unrepeatable, not in this lifetime at least. The paradoxes that shape our understanding as light travels through space. It behaves like a wave, but light is also made of tiny particles called photons. This is the paradox of wave-particle duality, and it has completely revolutionized modern physics. The universe is filled with intriguing paradoxes like this, statements that challenge our understanding of reality and force us to question our deepest assumptions. These paradoxes have the power to change our lives in profound ways, opening us up to new possibilities and reshaping the very fabric of our existence. Let's explore some paradoxes that might change your perspective on life. The lottery paradox. Imagine the lottery jackpot has grown to over $64 million. If you go out and buy a lottery ticket, knowing full well that your chances of winning are 10 million to 1, it would be logical to assume you didn't win. You'd also be justified in thinking that your friend, your uncle, his sister, their cousin, and their dog all have losing tickets. You're justified in believing that everyone who bought a ticket will lose, even when you know the lottery was fair, and there has to be a winner. You're justified in believing something you know to be false. This demonstrates that truth is relative. It depends on context, prejudice, and your perspective about the world. Because the truth is, the only thing you can prove with certainty is that nothing is certain. Russell's paradox: if we have a set of all sets that do not contain themselves, does that set contain itself? Imagine there's a barber who shaves all men who don't shave themselves, and only men who don't shave themselves. Does the barber shave himself? This is an example of Russell's paradox, a paradox that shook the mathematical world. These paradoxes playfully nudge us into realizing that self-reference can often lead to unexpected contradictions. The paradox of hedonism: we all want to be happy, but those who seek out happiness directly often don't find it. This is the paradox of hedonism. If we truly want to be happy, we need to stop searching for happiness and pursue other meaningful activities, like nurturing our relationships or serving others. Only then can we be truly happy. The pursuit of pleasure in its raw form often leads to disappointment, while a life lived in service can lead to unexpected happiness. Deep down, we all know this. Endless partying, decadent eating habits, and shopping sprees. We know these activities are never as fulfilling as we think they'll be. More often than not, we're left with a sense of emptiness after the dust settles. It's called post-indulgence clarity. We see this paradox even in our relationships. Expecting your partner to completely control your happiness often makes them unable to make you happy, at least not in the way you want. The reality is that to have good relationships, we need to be somewhat independent of them. The paradox of choice: people think that to find the right partner, they need all the options in the world to pick the perfect person. But in truth, having more options isn't always better. Just look at the fact that we have all these dating apps at our fingertips, and many of us still can't find a healthy relationship. This is the paradox of choice, and contrary to what we think, many options often leave us less satisfied with our final decision. I once watched a TikTok where a guy said, "Men today see more beautiful women while scrolling through TikTok for 5 minutes than kings from the past did in their entire lives." And although it was a joke, he was entirely correct. But it's not a good thing. According to biological anthropologist Helen Fisher, the human brain isn't built to deal with more than 5 to 9 options for a partner. After that, the brain goes into decision paralysis, where it almost refuses to pick. So the next time you feel inundated by options, remember that less is sometimes better, and more data may not always be more informative. The paradox of knowledge learning is great. Asking questions and figuring out how things work is how our species has gotten to where it is today. But learning is also a paradox because the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. It's an amazing paradox, one that encourages you to never stop learning. Simpson's paradoxes are everywhere in mathematics and statistics, like Simpson's paradox. Here, trends that appear in different groups will disappear or even reverse when the groups are combined to form a larger group. In the 1970s, UC Berkeley was accused of gender bias against women in its admissions process. At first glance, the admissions data made it seem like men were more likely to be admitted than women. But when the data was broken down into individual departments, most departments had admission percentages that were significantly in favor of women. The problem was that a higher proportion of women were applying to more competitive departments with lower admission rates. So when compared to all the men in the school, it seemed like women had lower rates of admission. But when compared to the men in each department, it was clear that the women actually had a higher rate. This is unfortunately how misinformation spreads. It's usually not with wrong data, but with correct data expressed without proper context, because the reality is that, often as paradoxical as it may seem, the whole is different from the sum of its parts. The paradox of identity change is ever present in our lives. The human body replaces billions of cells daily, and every 7 years or so, you are an entirely different cellular collection. So if we're constantly changing, how do we know the person we are today is the same person we were 7 years ago? One might say the essence of who we are remains, but that essence is really just the result of our thoughts, beliefs, and experiences, which are also changing. So who really are you? The backwards law. Maybe you like defining yourself based on your struggles, how hard you pursue something you want to achieve. But have you ever thought that sometimes trying too hard to get something almost makes it impossible to get? It's the backwards law, and it's an interesting concept with lots of layers to uncover. Consider the story of Lionel Messi. In 2016, after his infamous penalty miss against Chile, Messi hung up his boots with his beloved Argentina in what seemed like the last nail in the coffin. Messi simply had enough. On the club stage, success seemed to come to him so easily, but where he really wanted it, where he desperately tried to do it all by himself, victory seemed elusive. This brings to mind the paradox of Achilles and the tortoise, coined by Zeno, the father of Stoicism. In this paradox, Achilles gave a tortoise a head start and races it to infinity. Zeno argued that Achilles will never truly overtake the tortoise, because when he reaches where the tortoise started, the tortoise will have moved a little further, and this pattern will continue till infinity. The paradox is silly, but it challenges our perception of movement, space, and infinity. And the realization it leaves with us, especially with Messi's story, is that sometimes, no matter how much you try, some things seem just that little bit out of reach. Messi had to accept that part of his legacy was beyond his control. The Argentine Football Federation was underfinanced and poorly managed, and there was no one around him when he needed support. With criticism pouring down from all sides and embarrassing defeats one after another, the dream would remain just that, a dream. Yet as soon as he let go, the tide began turning. Messi took almost a metaphorical back seat, dropping deeper than his traditional role, playing farther from the goal than he had ever played. His job now wasn't to shine himself, but to cast light on others, many of whom were young kids who were fans of him when he hung up his boots in 2016. But there he was on December 18, 2022, nearly 6 years after that missed penalty, lifting the World Cup. Fermi's paradox. Very few stories are as remarkable as Messi's. Most of us live and die without doing or being anything special. Or is that so? If there's nothing oddly special about us, the earth, and the life it holds, then the universe should be teeming with life. And yet, it isn't. You might say maybe it is, and we just aren't advanced enough to search the galaxy to find it. And you'll be right. But considering how young our galaxy is compared to others out there, and that if given enough time, any advanced species should be able to figure out interstellar travel. If there are any aliens, we should have seen them by now. This is Fermi's paradox, and put simply by a New York Times article, it exclaims, "If life is so easy, someone from somewhere must have come calling by now." Maybe equally paradoxical is the insignificance of the question, are we special? When you boil it down to the individual, there are around 20 quintillion animals on Earth. That's 20 billion. Yet the value of a single life isn't questioned. So why do we think that the universe teeming with life will make us any less unique? There's something innately valuable about life. What exactly it is may remain forever elusive. The coastline paradox. Speaking of elusive things in life, the coastline paradox is a geographical conundrum that originated in the mind of British scientist Lewis Fry Richardson. It's a concept that challenges our understanding of measurement and infinity, revealing a surprising contradiction that's not only mathematical, but also physical. Essentially, this paradox states that the length of a coastline depends on the length of the tool used to measure it. The shorter the ruler, the longer the measured length of the coastline. This is because a smaller ruler can capture more of the intricate twists and turns of the coastline. But here, the paradox arises. Theoretically, as the ruler gets infinitely small, the length of the coastline becomes infinitely large. Consider the coastline of Britain as an example. If we were to measure it with a 100-kilometer ruler, we would get a significantly shorter length than with a 1-kilometer ruler, which would capture more details of the coastline. And if we used a 1-centimeter ruler, the coastline would appear even longer. Following this logic to its extreme, the coastline seems to stretch to infinity as the ruler shrinks to zero. But how can this be? After all, Britain is an island of finite size. The paradox stems from the fractal nature of coastlines. They have a high degree of complexity and self-similarity at all scales. This is a real-world example of a mathematical concept known as fractal geometry. The coastline paradox is not only mind-bending, but it also has practical implications for cartography, geology, and various other disciplines. It teaches us a humbling lesson about the limitations of our measurements and how they can be influenced by the scale at which we look at things. It's a testament to the unexpected complexities that can emerge from something as simple as measuring a length. The value of your time. For the past month or so, I've been thinking a lot about life. When people say that, they usually mean what they want to do in life, whether that be their career, relationships, entertainment, or leisure. But I've been thinking differently. Of course, I've been thinking about those things, but I've also been thinking about how much of your life is really yours. How much of your life is really being lived to its full potential? Are you living, or are you just existing? On average, you're going to get about 79 years on this big rock called Earth. If you live in Monaco, it's closer to 90. If you live in Chad, you'll be lucky to get 50. Regardless, we don't get 79 years of freedom. We have responsibilities and things that we can't ignore, most importantly our bodies. Assuming you sleep 8 hours a night on average, about a third of your life, or 26 years is going to be spent sleeping. So right away we're down from 79 to 53. But it doesn't stop there. Chances are if you're reading this article you're going to or have gone to school. In the United States you'll go for at least 12 years, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 36 weeks a year. This amounts to 17,280 hours spent just inside the school building. But wait, we also have to factor in homework and out-of-school activities, among other things. So this is more like 22,000 to 25,000 hours, or about 3 years of your life. If you go to college or university afterward, make it 5 years instead. We're down to 48 years. Well, all this schooling and money you spent getting a degree has to be put to some use, right? Chances are, you'll try and get a job in the field of whatever your degree is in. It'll probably be a full-time job, so you'll be working 40-hour weeks pretty regularly, if not more than that. Let's say you get 2 weeks of vacation per year. The average person works for about 40 to 50 years of their life, so we'll just go with the average and say 45. Over your entire life, you'll work on average about 90,000 hours, or about 10 years of your life. We have 38 years left. Wait, depending on where you live, your commute to work will vary. You might drive yourself, you might walk, you might use an Uber or a taxi. Regardless, your commute to and from work on average takes about 1.5 hours a day. Adding this up over your entire working career, it amounts to 17,520 hours, or about 2 years of your life, 36 years left. All of this work and studying really builds up an appetite, so you should probably spend some time eating. On an average day, we spend about 70 minutes just eating food to survive. In your 79 years of life, you'll spend about 32,000 hours just eating, or about 4 years of your life, down to 32. Well, after you're done eating, you have to clean up and maybe do some chores around the house. On average, you spend about 1 hour a day doing tasks just around your house. Cleaning up after you eat, washing dishes, doing laundry, showering, and plenty of other stuff. This amounts to nearly 29,000 hours over the course of your life, or about 3 years, 29 years left. Eventually, all of that food and water has to leave your body somehow. You'll spend about 3 months of your life just sitting on the toilet. Yeah. Of course, we also waste time, and we do it pretty well. Over the course of our lifetimes, we'll spend about 115,000 hours on our phones, or about 13 years. This, of course, is just your phone. This doesn't include you watching TV, playing games, among other things. 16 years left. Assuming you can afford to retire at the average age of 62, you'll spend the rest of your life living the luxuries of retirement, if you can still function properly. Over 50% of retired people over the age of 65 have some sort of disability, with 15% of those people having 3 or more. Chances are, if you are one of these people, you'll be in and out of medical care pretty often. So those final 16 years of freedom you have, it's a coin flip that doesn't exactly entail freedom. So overall, you have 1 year in your 79-year life to really and truly do what you want to do. But despite the age you might be, young or old, you may be nearing the end of your time with some of the most important people in your life. For example, while you're young and in school, from the ages of 1 to 18, you'll most likely be spending nearly every day in the presence of your parents. After you finish your schooling, assuming your parents are in their mid-40s, we'll say they have about 30 years left in their life. The real world starts to set in. Your job, your possible relationships, your important things to do in life take priority. Eventually, if you leave your hometown, you'll only be seeing your parents around holidays and special occasions, maybe 10 days a year. So 300 days left with the people who brought you into the world, whereas before, you would see them almost every single day. You have already spent 95% of the time that you will ever spend with your parents in the first 18 years of your life, and now you only have the remaining 5% for the rest of your life. Finding purpose in probability. At the end of the day, there's only one thing that matters, and that's your own happiness. What many people don't realize is that they do so many things in life just to try and succeed, as opposed to fulfilling a purpose. They work a job they hate for 40 years just to make that extra $30,000 a year, so they can afford a car that they only drive to work. It's temporary happiness, not genuine happiness. People go to school to become a doctor because their mom or their dad or somebody else told them to, not because they actually want to. I really hope that every single person reading this article gets insanely rich and famous so that they can finally realize that this isn't the point of life. The point is to be happy with what you're doing while you're doing it. All right, sure. The 45 working years, or however long you're working, is going to be hard to get past. But what if you don't hate waking up every day to go to work? What if your work is your happiness? You see, life isn't a straight path. You can't map it out perfectly one-to-one. It just doesn't work like that. We spend every day planning what we're going to do the next, instead of just taking in the day for what it actually is. Sure, we have to eat, duh. But what if we spend that time eating with friends or family, or just people who make your life better? Your commute to work might be long and tedious sometimes, but what if you spend that time listening to podcasts or carpooling with coworkers and friends? The 13 years we waste on our phones might seem useless, but what if we use that time to build the business you've always wanted to, or build the brand you've always wanted, or make a YouTube channel to talk to people about the random ideas you get? You'll bring so much value to people that you never even thought was possible. Let's say you take care of yourself and regularly work out decently well. Your chances of being healthy later in life are much more likely, and you'll have much more free time to master the things that you really want, whether that be a skill or just relationships with others. No matter what you or I or any person on this planet does, time doesn't stop for anyone. Time is the one thing you cannot get back if you lose. If you lose a lot of money, it's fine, you can get more. If your friend decides to turn their back on you, it's fine. There are millions of people out there in the same situation. But time? You can't get it back. Once it's gone, it's gone. How many days have you spent doing the same mundane tasks that you hate? And more importantly, when is it going to end? Life is about choices. Every choice you've ever made has led you to this exact moment reading this article. And given that you only have one life, at least in this universe, why not make your own decisions? So many people live life predicated on somebody else's opinion, which is dumb. People have so many barriers in life, but they aren't really about money, they aren't about time, they aren't about how you look. It's about opinions. Other people's opinions. Probably about 90% of people are unhappy because they value someone else's opinion more than their own. When you're old and unable to do the things that you could have when you're younger, you'll regret, and regret hurts more than any breakup, failure, or anything else ever could. Life doesn't have to suck. You don't have to regret everything. That FOMO, or fear of missing out, is a poison. Instead of living trying to mimic people you see on Instagram or YouTube or social media, just live based on your own terms. Instead of just observing and living, passively really start to think about what you do with your time. Does that mean call your boss and tell him you quit? No. Does that mean drop out of school tomorrow? No. All it means is to truly decide what you want in life and put yourself in the right direction. It's not going to happen overnight. That's not the point. There would be no journey then. Cliché as it sounds, your 79-year journey here is very short. Sure, it's technically the longest thing you'll ever do, but the universe is 13.8 billion years old. If the universe's history was condensed down into 24 hours, the world as we know it, with cars and airplanes and civilization as we know it, would only come into existence in the very last second. Block out any and all negativity in your life. And once you can truly realize that the only opinion that matters is your own, life can get pretty clear, and the noises inside your head get pretty quiet. The miracle of your existence. Living a life like you do today, you had to be put here. But, even at one time the earth wasn't here. The universe had to form in the exact way it did for life to form on earth. The fundamental forces of nature just so happened to come together in the way that they did. Luckily, gravity is a thing, and it's proved to be useful. So useful that it's pretty much the glue that holds together any star, planet, galaxy, pretty much anything. The strong and weak nuclear forces are able to keep us as humans held together at the lowest levels imaginable. Luckily, one lost planet roaming the solar system collided with Earth over 4 billion years ago. And that is why we have the moon. That is why we have seasons. It's why the climate is just perfect. It's why we have liquid water on Earth, which currently remains as the only place in the entire universe known to harbor life forms of any kind. Out of millions, billions, whatever the number is, out of all of those planets, only one has life, for certain. But even 1 out of a billion are better odds than you being alive. For some reason that I wish I could tell you, one day, a microorganism, one that couldn't be seen to our naked eye, began feeding on the thermal vents at the bottom of the ocean. This little, almost insignificant organism played the most important role of them all. For all they knew, a world above them didn't exist. But one day it would. Over millions of years, evolution took place. These microbes began to be able to replicate themselves, and each and every single step of evolution began. The pure numbers of the situation doesn't do it justice. The odds of everything being so perfect that each step brought us progressively closer to becoming modern humans. Humans that could realize they're human, that from one microbe spawned an entire species that took over the entire planet. Over a few thousand years. On a universal timescale, that's quite literally nothing. But now let's think about humans. What separates us from everyone else? The minds of animals have continuously gotten more advanced over time, but a human mind is something completely different. Sentience, consciousness. We are aware of some internal state of being. We don't wake up in the morning because you've thought about it. Your brain just did it. We don't think about breathing. We don't think about blinking. Your brain automatically takes in all of your senses and creates a picture, a view of the world in your head. For all we know, the Earth could be something completely different from what we see day to day. But the way we perceive it all comes down to how a 3-pound organ in your head can put together a puzzle, with the pieces being all of your senses. But it isn't perfect. It's easy to trick. For example, listen to this and try to imagine it. The sound of clattering dishes, soft background music, the murmur of conversation, and the occasional clink of glasses. You're probably thinking of a restaurant. It has multiple tables, all having a little world of their own. You might be imagining waiters moving food around. This little universe of its own was created in your head, all from just your sense of hearing. Humans have the ability to picture things, to see them from a different perspective, to take our imaginations and make them a reality. This works great, actually. Every invention ever made was due to that spark, that initial burst of creativity. The brain built us as individuals, and we built the world. Luckily, we're on a planet with hundreds of different elements, some of which work great for shelter or technology. Some work great as food sources to keep us alive. Some release certain chemicals in your brain that make you feel a certain way. And these chemicals released form you as a person. For example, The fight or flight response that we get when we're in danger is the result of adrenaline, a hormone in your body. Happiness is the result of having large amounts of serotonin, and the most important one involving your existence today, the love formula. Sorry to break it to you, but you see, you couldn't have gotten here by yourself, even if you wanted to. You may think you're the result of randomness, but actually, everything happened the way it was supposed to. Your parents met, which by itself is an extremely low probability event. Depending on your age, out of millions or possibly billions of people, these two met at the perfect timing. For example, you reading this article offsets your daily activities by about 10 to 15 minutes. Everything you do after you finish reading will alter your life in some way. As weird as it sounds, you're actually changing the course of your life right now. Some events that should have happened won't, and others that shouldn't have happened will. Every day you stray further down your own personal timeline, one that not any other single person on the planet has lived except you. Your parents are no exception to this. They both lived their own lives, were raised by different parents, hopefully, worked different jobs, had different friends, but somehow ended up meeting. And not only did they meet, but they liked each other enough to stay together, to come to the decision to have a child, you. Unless you are a mistake, like me. Not even kidding. It keeps going. A woman has about 300,000 eggs inside her body. A male can have billions or trillions of different sperms throughout his life, but only specifically one of each could make you. And it did. The odds of that are 1 in 400 quadrillion. If the situation hadn't been perfect, if that one stoplight hadn't been green, if that line at the grocery store wasn't so long, there's a pretty high chance that your parents would have never met. These lucky situations don't stop at your parents. They keep going. It extends to their parents and to their parents, all of which somehow ended up living long enough to have kids. This goes back tens of thousands of years, even your ancestors, thousands of years ago when the life expectancy was literally 30 years. This continues all the way back to that very first little microbe at the bottom of the ocean floor over 4 billion years ago. Your life is the result of a family tree that hasn't been broken for billions of years. What are the odds that all of that happened perfectly? You're more likely to be struck by lightning 1,000 times in a single day than you are to be alive. You're more likely to be a victim of an airplane crash every single day of the year, back to back to back, than you are to be alive. You're more likely to win the lottery 9 times in a row than you are to be alive. Some may say you were put here for a purpose. Others may say you just got lucky. The universe has 1080 atoms. The odds of you being born are much lower than that. The number of 50-50 coin flips your family has gone through when it comes to living long enough to have children, or dying before carrying on the family line, goes back tens of thousands of millions of years. This gets more interesting when you consider alien civilizations. The odds of us meeting are already low, but when you think about everything that had to happen for 2 different civilizations coming into existence close enough to each other to actually contact each other, it's just crazy to think about. No matter what age you are, no matter where you live, no matter your gender, you are alive. This is a luxury that, by the numbers, you shouldn't have even been given. What's the point in living a life that you aren't trying to squeeze everything out of? Looking at the regret in the faces of people who are too old to do the things that they really wanted to do in life is perhaps one of the scariest things in the world. Waking up in the morning and realizing that your existence is actually a miracle. Something that seems so perfect, so orderly, came from an infinite set of possibilities. The amount of thoughts you have in a day, the number of neurons that are fired and exist in your brain, are inconceivable in magnitude. This doesn't happen by accident. Everything that could have happened didn't. It only happened in the way that set the universe into its current state. The smallest of things, the tiniest of decisions, makes the biggest differences, the biggest impacts. Understanding how little of a chance there is that you're here today is terrifying, but yet I find that more than anything else, it gives me purpose. It gives me a reason to say that I and everyone else have a reason to exist. I believe you exist for a purpose, but that's for you to figure out. I can't tell you why we exist, but I can tell you one thing that's for certain. We shouldn't have even been here in the first place. All right, that's a wrap for today's exploration of possibility and probability. I hope this video gave you a new perspective on just how miraculous your existence truly is, and maybe inspired you to take some chances in your life. Remember, even the most improbable things happen every single day somewhere in this vast universe. You beating the astronomical odds to be here is proof of that. So the next time you're hesitating to pursue something because the chances seem slim, remember Roy Sullivan and his 7 lightning strikes. Or think about the 1,000,000,000,000 odds you've already overcome just by existing. Life is short, the possibilities are endless, and you've already beaten the biggest odds just by being here. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe for more mind-expanding content, and share with someone who needs a reminder of how special their existence truly is. Until next time, keep defying the odds and making the impossible possible.